Welcome in, builders. This week we are looking at Tien Chi Spring and Autumn, a much requested nation, and ironically, one of the nations that was a very, very close candidate for being my first Dominions content. Based on what I had been doing on the channel, I thought it would have fit in rather well, but I also didn't feel like I was quite ready for them. They had had some changes in 6, and now I'm much, much more comfortable in 6, and I want to check out what's changed for them. And spoilers, it's good stuff. All right, let's start by looking at the lore. The Celestial Empire has not yet been founded. The magic of the Way permeates the realm, and reclusive mages conjure celestial beings to do their bidding. Nobles wage war upon each other for honor and glory. A few chosen warriors and mages dedicate their lives to training in the way of the 5 elements. The deceased are worshipped, and village priests conjure the dead to ask for guidance and aid. It is a time of legends. So, a little sparse on the lore here, Ilwinter. I think you could probably afford a second paragraph. But that being said, this is the origin of Tien Chi. The celestial bureaucracy is their middle age and is a very, very interesting nation, which we will get to sometime. For now, this is a very classic, like, kung fu, wushu type nation. So we've got lots of, like, the pseudo-religious, pseudo-magic going on here. Very, very cool stuff, and it's very flavorful despite the tiny little blurb that we got. For our national feature, we are a nation comprised entirely of humans, but that's kind of sort of not true because we have a ton of conjurations, and there are various different types of demons or animals and things like that that we summon in and control. Our military is versatile and well equipped with large shields and iron implements. We also have noble chariots. We have good troops, like really good troops. I had forgotten how well equipped they were in early age. When we look at them, I think you'll see this is a nation that I feel strongly can be played as a scales nation, i.e., you're not really focusing on a big bless. You are more focused on getting really good scales and pumping out lots of troops and lots of mages to support those troops. For magic, we have water, astral, air, fire, nature, glamour, earth, and some death, and we can summon in celestial beings. The downside here is, for the most part, we only get any of these up to about 2. We'll get the oddball 3 in a path, but for the most part, you're sitting at 1s and 2s. One of the big changes in Dom 6 was the addition of a couple new mage types that really, really helped this nation out. Before, you'd have a lot of mages that were 1s and 2s and 3 or 4 or 5 paths, and that's really hard to use in combat effectively. You're paying for every path, whether you use it or not. Unlike Arcus of Folly also, you don't have quite the same ease of access into your communions. You can do some, but they're kind of difficult to get into, and you're not going to have a ton of them. You're going to be relying on random astrals, which doesn't feel particularly great. Wide pathing, relatively low, but we're pretty good at what we can do with it. Our priests are average. We do have a Holy 2, otherwise we have some Holy 1s, but we're not a strong priest nation. It can be kind of difficult to get a lot of blessings out, and when we look at things that we can summon in, we can see why that can kind of be a problem. For buildings, we have standard forts and standard buildings, nothing crazy there. For sites in our capital, we have the Bamboo Grove, which enables recruitment of Master of the 5 Elements and Warriors of the 5 Elements, which are our sacreds over here. We also have the Gate of Spring and Autumn. This allows us to recruit our Celestial Masters, which is our big cap mage. We get 2 astrals, a fire, 2 water, and a death, and it boosts the range of astral rituals by 1 province. So, pretty good. We have relatively good income here, 6 gems. They're in relatively useful types. We have a summon that can use the waters pretty effectively, so that's pretty nice. Next up, let's take a look at our unit roster. And while this looks very wide, we actually only have a couple types of units, but then they change into better and better equipment depending on what you're feeling like paying. First up, let's check just this footman. This guy's actually pretty good. He is a pike user. Pikes are relatively uncommon in the early age. It is a length 5 weapon. That is amazing. It's relatively uncommon to have length 5. So what that means is you get to make repel checks on everybody. Now, the downside of this guy is he only has 10 attack, and he really relies on getting those repel checks to survive. So any way that you can buff his attack or debuff the enemy's defense so it's easier to poke them when they attack you is greatly appreciated by these guys. They are really cheap at 10 gold, 9 resources, 9 recruitment. So if you're in a situation where you're not taking arrow fire, these guys expand actually pretty well. You will take attrition. I mean, they are human troops. They only have 10 protection, which is really only 9 on the body. We have amazing helmets as Tien Chi. This half helmet is 18 protection on our very lowly troop here. So these guys are pretty interesting. It also can be nice to use these to take cav charges. Since they have a length 5 weapon, you have at least a okay chance to possibly get lucky and get a repel on that. And if they do get goinked by the horsemen, it's fine. I mean, this is a cheap troop. Of note also, they only have 10 morale, so they would appreciate anything that can buff their morale a little bit. And slow at combat speed 11. I guess that should be mentioned here. They are not a quick troop. But overall, very cheap, has a direct purpose of I want to repel things to defend myself. Pretty good there, pretty good. Next up, I want to take a look at the shielded variant of the footman. And you'll notice we have him, and him, and him. So we have 3 varieties of the same troop, essentially. This is the least armored of them. 10 gold, 11 resources, 9 recruitment, so almost the same price as our pikemen. What do we get? We've traded out our pike for a regular spear, and we are wearing full leather armor. So the same kind of weak-ish armor, but now we also have a tower shield, and a good tower shield. 16 protection with 7 parry and only 2 encumbrance. No, he's only got 3 encumbrance from that. So he's running around with 6 as his basic encumbrance, which isn't too bad for a strong, what I would call medium troop. This guy's pretty darn good. Now, again, he has the same problem that he only has 10 attack. Now, that's bog standard human troop, but it's not uncommon that we're going to run across things with 12, 15 plus defense, and that's where these guys will struggle a little bit. They still are spearmen, though, so you're still going to hopefully get repel checks, and we have a great shield and a great helmet, so we do not fear archers particularly. 10 protection is solid enough in the early age. Note, we do have that low-ish morale at 10 still, and we are even slower down to 9 combat speed. Overall, if I wanted a early game shielded troop, this would be my go-to guy. Next up, we have a medium footman. Same exact guy, same exact training, so 10 attack, 10 morale, everything the same, except we've traded out the full leather armor for a scale mail cuirass, taking our protection up to 10. I don't like these guys. We are now spending 14 resources for 1 more protection. I don't think that's worthwhile. I think I would rather try to get a couple more of the lighter guys out, depend on their shield, getting parries to keep them alive. For the extra, what is that, 14 versus 11, so 3 extra resources for this guy. I'm not sold on that. I'm not sold on it. The final variety is the heavy footman, and I think this one's a more interesting choice. We're now up to 20 resources, so almost double, but we are wearing full scale mail, which skyrockets our protection up to 15. And this is a true 15. We have no natural protection. We have armor 15 on the body and 18 on the head, and we still have that amazing tower shield. So a body hit that gets parried with your shield is 31 protection. Very, very solid. I mean, this guy is almost like an Abyssian for his defense. And with no natural protection, you could bump this a few more points by throwing on some iron skin or some bark skin to him. Not that yours particularly needed, but just of note that you could definitely do that. Now, again, though, this is the same human inside better armor. So still 10 morale, still 10 attack. These are not particularly killy troops, but they're very stable line holders. They don't have formation fighter, so you're only getting 3 per square, but that's totally fine. These guys are going to stick around for quite a while. What they don't like is area of effect magic hitting them. We don't have any resistances or anything special there. Our defense is 13, but it's not really because that's including our shield parry So, yeah, watch out for area of effect things. They're not going to love that. I do like that we have 3 varieties here. I think we could probably just do with the 2 in all honesty, but I think early game you want the cheap guys. Late game, if you can afford it, these guys are very solid. Uh, definitely good line holders. Next up, we have this variety of the footman. He's wearing the same armor as the light troop, and for the same cost. He has traded out his shield and spear for a glaive, however. Glaives are super interesting. Unfortunately, it's -1 attack, so he only gets 9 attack. However, that 9 attack is backed up with 22 damage that has a 50-50 chance to either be piercing or slashing. I like these troops. I find them a little hard to use because you definitely don't want this to be your line guy. You might as well just get the other shielded variety. It's the same length, so you're not going to get better repels, and we are worse at attacking, so you'll be worse at doing it. However, these guys are pretty good killy troops. Again, they would really appreciate attack buffs or defense penalties on the enemy. Note, they've only got 10 defense skill and 10 protection, so they don't like being in grindy combat. They like coming up, swinging, and getting kills. Next, we have a second variety of that. Again, we trade up for the Scale Mail Cuirass. You only end up with basically 1 more protection. I do not like this variety for the same reasons that I don't like the medium footman. Same weapons, same training, same troop. Finally, we have the heavy footman. I actually do like this one. This guy jumps up to 15 protection. I like this a lot. I think if you're not taking arrow fire, I would prefer these guys over the shielded variety. Maybe not as a full line, but either like as the center to try to punch through, or maybe on the flanks to kind of be your wrapping troops. Again, though, same chassis inside the armor. So only 9 attack, 10 morale, 9 defense on this guy. So you're really looking at getting some buffs on attack and some penalties on the enemy if you want this to be good. So I do like these quite a lot, though. I like a big 2-handed option. Remembering the semi-recent Monolith fight where we really struggled to get punched through his protection, we could totally do it here. This guy would be able to do that. Finally, for the basic foot troops, we have the Archer. A 10 gold, 12 resource, 9 recruitment, so a little on the pricey side. However, you get a full leather armor with the nice helmet. So we are as armored as our light troops. We have a short sword, which is we're not particularly good at. We've only got the 9 attack, but it actually hits pretty hard. So they're okay when things get to them, trying to stab back at least. What makes them special is we actually use the composite bow. A relatively rare piece of equipment in early age, but a very good bow in early age. At range 40, we have +1 precision from the bow itself. So we have 11, which is above the 10, so slightly more accurate than normal. And we do 13 piercing damage. So a very, maybe slightly expensive, like a short bow. A junky short bow usually is like 6 resources, so we're twice as expensive. However, we're running good equipment defensively. We can kind of protect ourselves with a short sword. We're using a good bow for the era. What really makes these guys stand out is our nation's magic is really good at supporting them. So these guys plus magic support are pretty fearsome, actually. So I like these guys quite a bit. I think they're very usable. Again, it's that same human here, though. There's no special training or anything. Still 10 morale, still the junky attack. It is a human troop. Next up, we have a horseman. This is the equivalent of a light horseman. He is wielding our composite bow. Do note here, though, for some reason, he never trained very well, and he's only at 8 because he is mounted and has the penalty. So we end up with a 9 precision, so they end up being very imprecise. However, because they wield a light lance and they have the mobile archer tag, I like to have these guys either attack rear or hold an attack rear. And as you run in and get close, having the lower precision matters less. So that is at least something there. Otherwise, they're using the step horse, which is a decent horse. However, they're just using the junky leather barding for 5 body. That is all the standard problems that lighter horse troops have. The horse tends to die. I actually do like these guys, though. As a hold an attack rear or an attack rear troop, they're wielding a light lance, so you get that first hit bonus. As they're running in, they'll take some pot shots. I think they're fine. I think it's because we have good grindy line troops, having flankers is really good. Like running behind them and maybe getting some lucky command kills is excellent. I think this is a usable strategy even during expansion. If you do go scales, you're going to have some shielded troops in the front, a few archers probably supporting them, or maybe you just go with the shielded troops and these guys. Have them hold an attack rear. They'll take pot shots while they're waiting to go, and then zoom to the back and hopefully get some kills. So I like these guys, with the caveat of the horse lets them down as usual. Next up, we have the Noble, and this is a very heavy cataphract chariot. Quite interesting in that. The rider and the horse are both very heavily armored. Our rider here is wearing our heavy gear. He has traded out the tower shield for a buckler. Tower shields don't really work very well on a chariot, but the buckler is still fine. Still 14. I like this guy quite a bit, actually. He's wielding a falchion. Falchions are pretty damaging slashing weapons, and he's pretty good at wielding it with an 11 attack. He's actually got decent morale at 13, and that great protection and good defense. So, good troop on here. The Cataphract Chariot, however, is the star of the show here. It is a trampler, and it is 16 protection, and the Cataphract Barding is 21 on the head and 13 on the body. Very good. Still 16 combat speed, so it's not like a super slow chariot, and his encumbrance is actually not that bad. So I like these guys quite a bit. They are good tramplers too. So a cadre of these on hold an attack rear, or again running down the middle to try to punch a hole, very decent. And they're surprisingly survivable. Now, they will have the same problem that all mounted troops have. In the end, the horse will probably end up racking up afflictions, and that'll become a problem. But I think this is a good heavy cavalry option in the early age. One of the best. One of the best. Definitely up there with like Sarmatia or other people who have that heavier cav. Do note though, if you want to use these guys, you probably need a scales build with production, because 40 gold, 52 resources, 46 recruitment, that's expensive. 5 of these guys are going to be 230 recruitment points. That alone means that most forts are going to struggle to be able to put out more than a handful of these guys, and that's if you can afford the resources. But I think this is an amazing thing to have in your pocket. A heavily armored, not super slow trampler has a lot of uses there. Finally, we have our Sacred Troop. Warrior of the 5 Elements, it is a cap-only Sacred. I struggle with these guys a lot. They are human troops, so they only have 12 HP. They're running 11 strength. They're fragile. There's no way around that. They're wearing a leather cuirass, and they actually do have natural protection a little bit at 5. 15 defense isn't terrible, but 15 defense and 9 protection are not going to keep you alive. That's just not going to happen. Otherwise, they have 5 shock resist, 5 fire resist, 5 cold resist, and 5 poison resist. So they have the full suite of resistances here, and good magic resist. So pretty defensive. 5 isn't going to save you from everything. Like a fireball is going to do more than 5 damage, but this will save you from weak auras, heat auras, cold auras, help you when you get into poison stuff, if you have to fight in temperatures that you don't like. All good stuff. There's nothing wrong with any of that, and it would stack if you took extra resistances on your bless. They have ambidextrous 2, so they are perfectly fine using their 2 short swords at length 1, and they have strength of the spring. This one's annoying. It's more than anything else. So during the spring, we get 50% more HP. During the fall, we get 50% less. So in the spring, we have 18 HP. Sure, 18 is better than 12, but 18 is not really going to save you. Maybe you take 2 hits rather than 1 to get killed, and 6 will definitely end up in you getting killed if you're hit. So I don't love that mechanic. It is flavorful, but it's not good. Alright, so what to do with these guys? I think these guys are a trap, and I hate to say it, but I think they are. We have tons of sacred summons, and they tend to not want the same kind of blessings that this guy would use. We have some sacred mages, and again, they wouldn't like the same things that this guy could use. If I was building a bless for this guy, I think you need something defensive and something offensive to make him work. One thing that I was kind of intrigued with would be displacement would up his defense skill to essentially a 20. So you're up into the realm of like glamour troop levels. And displacement would work pretty well on a lot of your other sacreds. And vitriol weapons. 16 attack on a piercing slash is not quite high enough, not quite killing enough, but he's pretty good at hitting with what he has. So 2 extra armor piercing, 7 damage acid attacks are pretty good. That could help you break armor against things that you're struggling with, and it being armor piercing is very good. People sing the praises of fire arrows. Well, fire arrows is an 8 damage armor piercing proc, so it's only 1 less damage, and you have the added benefit of nothing resists acid, and it can help you break armor. So I think that'd be an interesting one here. Other things you could do, maybe quickness. Would give you 2 more attack, 2 extra defense. Quickness plus, again, a weapon buff I think you would need. If you were going to try to go the protection route, I think hard skin is the way to go. That would up their natural protection up to 11. I don't know, though. That's a lot of points for kind of a meh, cap-only dude. Commanders, heroes, and prophets. I'm going to start with the heroes, so I don't forget them. We have an interesting couple choices here. I'm going to start with this guy here, Master of the Iron Crutch. He is, first off, an immortal. If you have an immortal troop, when they die, they come back. I believe it's their home province, which for heroes, I believe, is always your capital, in a few months. There are other types of immortality, but all of ours are just true immortals. He's a very interesting guy. He has 2 air, 2 astral, 2 death. I think this is the highest death we get on our nation. We have options to get these other ones, but still, those are perfectly fine. That's useful. Having death and air lets you do some summon stuff. He can cloud trapeze. Pretty good things there. He has a fear aura. He is sacred. He has spirit sight. He's very, very old, and he's a plague carrier. What that does is it gives him a cloud around him that gives things diseases. In our, I believe it was Sarmashian stream, we fought this guy, and he ended up diseasing all of our cataphracts. So all of our very expensive cavalry slowly died off for killing one dude. It was pretty annoying. And the fact that he's immortal is what really makes him good. You could cloud trapeze onto something, like a thug or something, and then just disease him with him. When he dies, he just comes back. So pretty interesting, pretty cool. He can buff himself really well here. So like you start battle, personal misform, body ethereal, skeletal body, or invulnerability, and go into your fear aura and your plague carrier, and hopefully plague somebody. Next up, we have 2 different types of immortals. Now, I'm not 100% sure on these guys. I don't remember them from Dom 5. According to the inspector, these guys are unique. But I have a very strong suspicion that these are not unique heroes. AKA they're multi-recruit heroes. AKA something like the Minotaur from Archocephali, where you can just get multiples of these. Either way, they're both pretty decent. Starting with this one. She is an immortal. She has the immortality trait. 1 air, 2 nature. It's fine. She's ethereal, flying, and a healer. Healer is a great thing to have. We do have some old people, so being able to knock off afflictions from them is great. She's not really a melee fighter or anything. Only 9 HP. Not really going to make a great thug or anything particularly. I think her best utility is the fact that she's an immortal healer. Have her run with your army. She can do stuff in combat, but mainly just for the healer, I would say. Next, we have the other immortal, the male. I think maybe more interesting here. 3 astral, I believe, is the highest we get on our nation. He is still immortal, and he flies. So you could fly into combats and cast anti-magic, or maybe even buff him up, and you could cast big astral things. Fire, air, and water paths are fine. Again, I think his biggest use is the fact that he is immortal, and he brings in some good astral for you. So, also a great leader. I think he is by far our best leader. I think normally we only go up to 100. And he can leave magic troops, which is kind of important because we do have a lot of magic summons. So pretty interesting. Overall, I would say good heroes here. Nothing that's like nation defining, so I don't think you need to like go fortune just for them, but good if you get one for sure. Next up, let's look at our regular lineup. We have a bog standard scout. He has all the things that scouts normally have. He can only be recruited in forts, so he's not a recruit anywhere scout, unfortunately, but he gets the job done like most scouts. Next up, we have our commander unit, and note that everyone else here is a mage, so he is literally our only non-mage, non-priest commander. It is the same as our noble chariot. He is a noble commander, same exact gear. He's running with 100 leadership and 14 morale, so pretty darn good there. Do note, if you don't have any other cavalry with you, you can be targeted with archers using fire cavalry, so just think about that. That may or may not become an issue for you. You probably don't want this guy charging in as a thug because he's really expensive. 135 gold, 52 resources, and he takes up fort turns to recruit. You don't get him off of your forts. As a leader, though, he does have 100 leadership, which is nice. Map move of 18 is slightly less than our horsemen and the same as our chariots. So if you are trying to lead either of those units around without footmen, this is your guy who can lead them the fastest. He's usable. Expensive, but usable. So I don't have too much to say about it. I should note he has full slots here. So maybe give him things that increase leadership, I think would help, especially inspirational things, because our troops, while good, only have 10 morale. That's kind of a problem for us. So something to think about there. Next up, we go into various types of mages. So one of the new additions in Dom 6 is the Student of the Sword. I don't like these guys. They are a bad researcher, and they have a random path of fire, air, water, earth, and nature, 100%. A one-path mage that is not good at researching, I wouldn't like it normally. We have other mages who do the same thing, but they can research. His one big bonus is he is a combat caster. Combat caster means when you get into melee, you have a chance to still cast spells. This is a very rare trait. I think that the Amazons can get this, and that's like the only non-nation, possibly non-cap unit that has that. So it's interesting. They do come in with okay weapon, and they have the stunning strike, which is somewhat interesting. It can hit you with a stun, but I don't think 70 gold and a full turn of recruitment is worth it for this guy, unfortunately. Next up, we have the Master of the Dead. These are pretty good. So this is going to start our trend of really, really efficient researchers. So 7 research for 40 gold per year. This is non-cap only or anything. That's pretty efficient. Like normally I say 10 gold upkeep per point of research, so we're way above that already. He is a Death 1. Death 1 mages aren't like the most impressive thing. However, we have the national spell for summon Ancestor Spirits, which we will look at later. So they have uses in combat. It should be noted that they have Spirit Sight, so they can see invisible units and in the dark. And for some reason they have Thrall Sutra, so I think those are like those little like talismans. And I don't know why you'd ever use this, but if you did, it's armor negating against undead and demons, and it has the Stop the Dead effect, which paralyzes them, and it's armor negating. Yeah, I don't think I would ever use that particularly, but it's there. So these guys are pretty good. They are very efficient researchers. We do have a use for Death 1. Also lets you search for death, and I found that if you're getting some death income, it could be worthwhile to empower one of these guys to 2. Then he could forge you a skull staff. He's up to 3, and he can do various other death things for you. Pretty good unit, not too pricey at only 100 gold. Next up, we have Student of the Way, which can only be recruited outside forts, or can be recruited outside forts as well. So this guy's a non-cap only. He has water naturally, and then he gets an air, an astral, a nature, or a glamour. They're all right. 9 research now for only 48. So for 8 more gold, you get 2 extra. I believe it was 2. Yeah, 2 extra research. Very good. I would definitely pay that. That is incredibly efficient. Let's round that to 50. So if this was a 5 research mage, that would be what I'd consider efficient. And this is almost double that. So very, very efficient here. They don't need to eat, so if you're having troops starve for some reason, it won't affect them. They're all right. They don't have particularly good pathing for combat, except for the nature one can do moss body for your army. However, we have some summons that they could do, especially if you get the astral water summons. We can get our demons of heavenly rivers with these guys, which we would much prefer to do rather than having a more expensive mage have to cast that ritual. Again, very efficient research here. Next up, we have the Master of the Five Elements. Now, this is a capital-only mage. I struggle with this guy a little bit. 17 research for 142 gold per year, so we are still efficient. He's not slow to recruit, so you can get more research quicker by recruiting these in your capital than you could your very efficient guys. But I don't think these guys transition into being combat casters very well. They have fire, air, water, earth, nature, and a 100% chance to get fire, air, water, earth, nature. So you basically get 2 in a single path. Any one of those at 2 would be useful, but you're paying for the other 4 paths when you're not using them. These guys would be okay to recruit to go out and do some site searching for you, or as a relatively efficient early game researcher. 355 gold is nothing to sniff at, but that's not super duper expensive. I think these guys, however, are overshadowed by this guy, the Celestial Master. This is our other cap-only mage. Now, he is slow to recruit, so you have to keep that in mind. However, 21 research at 194 gold per year. So that's a lot. That's a lot of research. You could brute force your way into a lot of things. Now, do note, because he's slow to recruit, in 2 turns we would have 21 research, whereas if we had spent those 2 turns getting this guy, we'd have 34 research. But these guys actually have a much, much higher chance of being combat useful. They are fire, air, 2 water, 1 astral, 1 glamour. They have a 100% chance to get air, water, astral, glamour, and on the second 100% chance to get a fire, earth, death, nature, and a 10% chance of similar things. So you can end up with some pretty high pathing here, but it's quite varied. These remind me a lot of Archocephali mages. They are priest level 2s, so these are our highest level priests, so they can help us by casting the Sermon of Courage, which is quite appreciated by our troops, and they can do various things in combat. So my favorite things here are probably the glamour guys for doing glamour things, astral guys for helping buff some astral stuff, but a lot of the other things our cheaper mages could definitely do. You kind of have to tailor make the scripts of these guys for each individual one, but like I said, do keep in mind this is our only guy who can do some Sermons of Courage, and we really appreciate that. Now, some weaknesses here. Slow to recruit. 485 gold is, ouch. That's a very expensive one, and same problem we run into on other wide pathing mages. Let's say I rolled really good glamour, so I'm going to have him do glamour stuff. You're not using your other pathing that you're paying for, and that hurts a lot. I like focused mages more than I like wide pathing mages. Also, he's the only flyer we have in our native roster without doing summons, so he can be targeted by fire flyers. And he's only running around with 0 protection, so be careful there. If I take these guys into combat, I often will give them Air Shield as their first script, just to make sure that a stray arrow doesn't hit our 10 HP, 0 protection mage right off the bat. They're also kind of cowardly at morale 10, so just note that they do like to run away, and they're flyers. So in this case, I think that's actually a good thing, because I'd prefer that they fly away to safety than I lose a slow to recruit cap only 485 gold mage. Finally, they have Spirit Sight, so they can see invisible things. Doesn't really matter for mages, but it's there. Do note that they have 70 magic leadership, but only 20 normal. The 70 magic is more than the Master of 5 Elements, which is at 50, and 10 down here on the student. 0 on Master of the Dead, although he can lead some dead troops, and 0 across the board on Student of the Sword. So, not particularly great at leading magic units, which is unfortunate because we have good summoned ones. Next, we have recruited in non-fort provinces, Student of the 5 Elements. This guy can get a random 100% of fire, air, water, earth, nature. He gets 7 research, and he only costs 34 gold per turn. So this guy is by far your most efficient mage. However, because you have to recruit him outside of forts, he's actually slow to recruit. I think the efficiency gain between this and this guy, where he's doing 9 for 48, I think I'd rather this guy, and we can get him at 1 per turn rather than the equivalent of slow to recruit. So, not a huge fan of the students. Only having 1 path isn't particularly useful in combat either, so that's not going to help you. Next, let's look at the Master of the Way, and he can be recruited in non-fort provinces. 1 water, and he gets 2 random 100% chances, so these are independent of each other, of air, water, astral, nature, glamour. These guys are a bit better, I would say, if you're going to get them outside of forts. Again, they're going to be pseudo-slow to recruit, and they're pretty expensive, but you'll probably get something here that's useful. But again, it's really random. Like, let's say you get air and glamour. All right, we are water, air, glamour. What are you going to do? That being said, we are a nation that would love to have magic boosters, so there's some things that could be interesting there. But you're probably going to be looking at boosters, you're going to be looking at spending gems, things like that to make these guys useful. I don't love these guys. Finally, we have Master of the Sword. Oh, baby. Can only be recruited in non-fort, forest, highlands, mountains. And they do require a lab. So these guys, though, oh, so good. Okay, so because you can't have a fort, they're slow to recruit. They're 170 gold, 5 resources. Not too bad there. Why do I like them so much? They have 2 levels of 100% random fire, air, water, earth, nature. That means every single one of these guys will be 2 in their path. Okay, you get a 2 fire guy. Phoenix power, now you're up to 3 fire. You can start doing fire arrows. You can start doing fireballs. You can start doing Furious Warriors to buff the attack and morale. Remember, that was kind of a theme with our troops. They would sure love that buff. Okay, let's say you get air. You can do Wind Guide. You can do protection from arrow type stuff. You can Mist Form. You can do lightning attacks. Okay, water. I do feel water's the weakest, but quickness. You can do Liquid Body. You can do Cold Bolts. You can do Slime. You can do the water fatigue attacks, which can be really good against things that otherwise you might struggle to hurt. On the Earth stuff, you can summon Earth Power up to Earth 3. You could do Temper Armors. You can do Iron Skin stuff. At 3 Earth, you open up basically the suite of what Earth can do. So very strong there. 2 Nature, Bark Skin, Eagle Eyes, Web, Tangle Vines, Vine Arrow, Bark Skin. You could use gems to go up to Howl. You could use gems to go up to Relief. Tons and tons of use here. And what makes these guys really interesting, these are a possible light thug. They come in with okay equipment. They have the same Spirit Strike, but it's much better than the Student. 15 attack for a blunt magic attack that only deals 1 damage, but it stuns. They have only robe, so they're not well protected. So they only have 2 protection here, but 16 defense. We have some national items that you can put on them that will help them a lot. And I do think if you were going to go with a Bless strategy, I believe it's called Shroud of the Martyr. We'll look at when we get to items. But it's a piece of armor that's got 9 protection, and it makes you sacred. So if these guys were sacred, they could have your bless. So if you were running, let's say, quickness would be amazing on these guys. This attack also apparently stays even if you're dual wielding. So you could have 3 attacks here. You could add chi shoes, 4 attacks. 4 attacks with some sort of weapon. Bless would do a lot of damage. Again, you can do lots of self-buffing. And we're only size 3. So 3 of them on the same square. And let's say, okay, you've got an air guy. So he's going to give everybody Mist Form and protection from arrows. Okay, you've got a water guy. He gives everybody quickness. Got an Earth guy. He's going to give everyone Iron Skin and protection from magic. Okay, now you have a very, very highly buffed group that can advance and cast spells or just attack. And they also have that combat caster. So hopefully they'll get into melee, they'll start slicing people up, and then every once in a while they'll throw a spell. All those really close range attacks or close range spells that you hardly ever see anyone use, these guys will actually use those. And they can be pretty devastating. Otherwise, not a good researcher. They cost 136 gold per year, so not efficient for researching, but that's a pretty good price for a very powerful combat mage. They also don't eat. They have mountain forest survival, so very, very good here. I think these guys are exactly what Tien Chi needed. In 5, they were a bit eh. This really, really helped. I will show off maybe a battle in the background towards the end here, and you can just see how versatile and useful these guys are. Like, having the fire buffs and the air buffs really, really help out our troops, who are well equipped but not well trained. So we greatly appreciate that there. Who would I prophetize? I think it's always going to be the Noble Commander. He's got good protection. He's our best mobility guy, not counting flying, I suppose. High-ish morale. He doesn't have anything to do when he stands behind your troops, so he's more than happy to cast your holy spells. I think this is your prophet. If I didn't do him, I don't know. Maybe a Celestial Master, but he's already holy too. These guys have other things they want to be doing. I think it's this guy. I honestly think it's going to be Noble Commander every time. National items, spells, and other magic. Tien Chi is pretty lucky. We have a good suite of different things that we can craft and summon. We have 2 different national-only items. The first is the Sword of 5 Elements, coming in at lesser magic items, so that's construction 3. Absolutely amazing item. So, to craft it, you need a fire and a water. We can get this on several of our mages very easily. It costs 2 fire and 2 water, and it gives you Reinvigoration 2 just right off the bat. So you could dual wield these for Reinvigoration 4. And it gives 8 slashing magic damage, 3 extra bonus attack, 4 defense, and it's a length 1 weapon. Very, very good. I should note, if you have a hammer, which we can kind of sort of do natively, it'd be hard, but you can get there. This would only cost you 1 fire and 1 water gem. For 2 gems, you could have this sucker. Amazing item. Absolutely amazing item. Our second national item, here we are. Our second one is again construction 3, and it is the armor of 5 elements. It requires earth 1, air 1, gives you 4 HP, an extra magic resist, 5 fire, shock, and cold resist. All for the price of 2 earth and 2 air. Again, just like the other one, a hammer will lower that to 1 and 1. For 2 gems, would you like a 17 protection armor that gives you 4 HP and a slew of resists? Because I sure would. Now, it does give you encumbrance 2, which stinks because most of our guys who would be putting this on would be mages, but you can offset that with your sword. So, very good here. Very, very good. Very cheap, very powerful. 17 protection is amazing. It would lower your defense by 1 on your guys, but they have good defense anyways. So I think that's a very interesting item there. While we are in items, I do want to call out that Shroud of the Battle Saint. This requires 1 astral to be able to craft, so we can easily do this natively. And it is essentially a cursed item. You can't take it off once you put it on. It gives you 2 HP and bless, and 9 body protection. So I think if you want to use those Masters of the Sword with a bless, this is very viable. It does come in here at construction 5, so it is a little bit higher, but I think this is a nation that would be very interesting to make those mages into very good thugs. It may be a little bit on the squishy side, but you can get so many of them that as battlefield thugs, I think they would do quite well. As for national magic, we have quite a few summons, as you can see here, and we have some non-summon magic. Let's take a look at the non-summon magic first. First up in Alteration 5, we have Internal Alchemy. It is a ritual spell. It requires 2 water and an astral, 5 water gems. And all this does is it de-ages you by 15 years. I don't love this one. Unfortunately, it doesn't really help us because these are our big cap only guys who look like they should be old masters. He's 285 or 286. He doesn't hit max age till 288. So if you get one of these guys and they get to old age, sure they could de-age themselves, but I've literally never cast that spell. So not a huge fan of that one. Next up in Evocation, at Evocation 5, we have Celestial Chastisement. Kind of hard for us to cast. We don't have Astral 3s very often. However, we could get there if we needed it. An interesting spell if very, very niche. So what this one does is it only hits magic beings. It is armor negating, does magic damage, whatever. It's very precise. It's relatively cheap on fatigue. However, what makes it interesting, they have to save or get enslaved. So if you are fighting somebody who is using magic beings, this will wreck them. Because not only do you take their unit, it now is fighting for you. And if it survives that fight, you keep the unit. So if you're fighting somebody especially who has magic being sacreds, I'm thinking of like Kailasa, this would destroy them. You would just be nabbing all their sacreds. Quite interesting, although, like I said, very, very niche. I mean, there's plenty of nations who never will summon a magic being. So, not sure how useful that is. Next up, I'm just going to browse this and then we'll look at the actual units. So, at Conjuration 1, we get Celestial Servant and Call Ancestors. At 3, we have Heavenly Rivers, Ambush of Tigers and Buffaloes. 4, we have Celestial Hounds. 5, we have Heavenly Fires. 6, we have Call Celestial Soldiers and Call Huli Jung. At 7, we have Wrath of Ancestors. So, whole slew of things here. The two that I think are most defining are Call Ancestors and Demons of Heavenly Rivers. So, let's look at the Ancestors first. This is very similar. There's a couple nations that also have these. Sarmashia comes to mind. This gives our Death 1 mages something to spam without having to do Skelly spam. They are ethereal, low defense, no protection guys. They are sacred though. So if you can find a way to bless them, which is kind of their downfall, they're really hard to bless because they're battlefield summons. Could be interesting. They have a length 0, attack 0, paralyze attack. Could be kind of good. They're good for just adding bulk that things are going to waste time killing. I'd rather an enemy mage spends time banishing these than casting a fireball at me. So that is their main use. The big Conjuration 7 Swarm of Ancestors gives you 20 plus of them for a Death 1 mage costing 1 gem. That's actually much more interesting. Let's say round 1 you have, let's just say 5 Death mages, and you can easily do that on this nation. You could pop out 100 Ancestral Spirits, and then your Prophet on round 2 does his Divine Blessing and blesses them all. The spell is 100 fatigue, so you're not going to be able to get multiples off really easily. But that's pretty interesting. That makes them much more useful. However, you're waiting until Conjuration 7, and you're using your Prophet to do that. So, little iffy there. One other note, if your god is present and you're in your own dominion, you will auto-bless every unit on the field. So if you have a mobile god, that can be kind of interesting with these guys, because then you get rid of the problem of getting them blessed. So just food for thought on that. Next up, we have that Celestial Servant. Magic being. None of our guys are demons, even though we kind of call them demons for some of them. They're magic beings. He doesn't need to eat, but he likes to eat. He is sacred. He has spirit sight. This guy's notable for basically just being a big sack of HP. He's got bad protection, bad defense, bad attack. Does hit pretty hard if he does hit with it. Why would I get these guys? I wouldn't. They cost Earth Gems to summon. If I was going to get them, it would just be, I need to bulk out my front line. They do have 48 HP, so if you went with a regen bless for some reason, they would be regenerating 5 plus. Could be pretty good there. Otherwise, I'm not particularly impressed with those guys. Next up, let's look at Tigers. As far as animal summons go, the tiger's okay. I do note that they have dark vision, so if you're going to be going underground, maybe grabbing a few of these could be useful. But they cost nature gems, and we have a much better way to spend nature gems, so I wouldn't go too hard on those. At the same level, you also get buffalo. I like buffalo a lot, actually. It's one of my favorite animal summons because they are a size 6 trampling berserker. So with 43 HP, there's a good chance they'll take a hit, go berserk, and then trample. So you won't have the problem of them retreating and trampling through your own army. Decent morale, although the standard weakness of animals of really bad resists. As an emergency, I could definitely see summoning these guys. Next up, let's look at the Celestial Hound. These guys are okay. They have patrol bonus, so they actually patrol at 11.8 strength, which is very, very high. And they're flyers. That could be important because you might need some flyers to go with your Celestial Masters if somebody is trying to do fire flyers. These guys could soak the arrows, essentially. They do have Shock Resist 15. They are animals, but they're animals with good magic resist. They also can see Spirit Sight. They have 2 decent attacks. So overall, these guys are all right. They're all right. Next up, we have the Demon of Heavenly Rivers. I really like these guys. They're very strong. For 1 summon, it costs you 9 water gems, and you get 3. So they're 3 water gems each. But 32 HP with 15 protection is pretty good. They have a great club that's a length 2, 12 attack, 32 damage. And they're size 5, so I like these guys quite a bit, actually. If I was going to make a bless around summon things, this would probably be the guy I think I would have to keep in mind. He would like regen. I think that's the biggest thing he would like. Extra protection. He does have 5 natural, so keep that in mind when you're choosing what you want to bless them with. They are amphibians also, so if you need to get underwater, these are your guys to do it. 15 morale is great. 15 magic resist is great. Overall, strong unit. Now, to summon them in, you do require a water and an astral. So you have mages who can do that natively. In fact, we can natively cast all of our summons, which is greatly appreciated. It's a pet peeve of mine that some nations have summons they have no hope of ever using. And I fall into the trap of designing my pretender to summon them, even if they're not good. But we don't have that issue here. So, pretty good. I would definitely consider getting these guys. It's a good use of water gems. And the fact that they would own underwater too. 15 protection is very high for most underwater stuff. Good HP. Very nice. Very nice. Next up, we have the Demon of Heavenly Fires. An interesting unit. So they require fire gems to summon in. Gives you a use for them. They're very fire resistant. They're flyers. They have heat 3, so they have a heat aura, and they have heat power. So if you have to dump scales, maybe consider going up some heat, and that would help these guys. They have a range 30 fire magic damage attack. Pretty good. 10 ammo on it. And then they have a Flaming Fist, which is not particularly good. I think I would much prefer that they stay in range mode. Overall, a usable summon. Next up, we have the Celestial Soldiers. I like these guys a lot too. They're relatively efficient to summon in. For 15 air gems and requiring 2 air and an astral, you get 6 of these guys. I think that's a pretty decent use of air gems. If you haven't burned them all on Alquills at this point, I like these a lot. So, size 5, so you can get 2 of them into a square. They have a length 3 glaive that is 14 attack and 32 piercing slashing damage. And they're wearing full armor and a helmet. So, they're essentially your glaive troop, your heavy glaive troop, but better because they also have some natural protection. And yeah, I like these a lot. They have Spirit Sight, so they can get through glamour things, etc., etc. They can fight underground. 6 of them per cast isn't bad. Let's say you had 45 air gems, you could turn that into 18 of these guys. That's pretty decent. Good HP, help you soak up arrow fire or magic attacks onto them and not other things. Very usable. I like them. Do note, like all of the summons we've looked at, they require magic leadership, though. So you have to think about who's going to lead these guys around. Finally, we have the Huli Jing. This is where I would probably spend my nature gems. I believe she is 30. Yeah, 30 nature gems requires a nature 2. We can easily do that. What do we get for that? Nature 1, glamour 3, and 250% of air, water, earth, astral, nature, and a 25% chance to get the same but trading out the nature for a glamour. So even barring her randoms, 3 glamour is very, very good. 3 glamour lets us cast Twilight and Nightfall if we want to go that route. We do have several troops who can see in the dark, so that could be good. The Twilight gives +1 to glamour mages, and we have other glamour mages who could make use of that. Quite good there. If she randoms into some earth, she could summon gnomes, which would give us glamour and earth magic on another summon, which would use glamour gems. So very, very nice there. She does shapeshift into a fox. She is very stealthy at having 80 stealth, and she's a spy. This is a very rare trait. Essentially, if you get the full slew of information in the province she's in, and if you are in the enemy capital, you can look at their graphs. Not something I do too much on stream. I probably should start showing graphs a bit more, but access to graphs could be super useful. Like if you look at the enemy and see, hey, they have a absolute metric ton of gem income. Maybe I should attack them sooner rather than later. Or, hey, this guy doesn't have any extra forts. He's running on 1 or 2 forts. Maybe I could just block both of those and choke him out. So Spy is actually a very powerful ability, if a little rare. They also have magic power, so if you're in a province with magic scales, they get extra, I believe it's attack, defense, and protection. Not particularly noteworthy here. You really don't want these to be fighting with only 11 HP. Would prefer they don't, but hey, it's a bonus. Some extra protection, extra defense, never know when that might be useful. Very, very nice. So overall, I would say I absolutely love that we can natively summon in everything on our list. I wish most nations were like that. And while some of them aren't the best, like the Celestial Servant, not in love with that, the Tiger, But these all have a use, right? Like, I could see myself getting in an emergency and needing just some blobs of HP to block for my mages. Or fire damage might be useful, or I need patrollers or flying things to keep my other mages safe, or a spammable undead, or a trampler, or an animal who can see underground. All amazing things. I absolutely love their lineup here. Very, very good. All right, let's also talk briefly about just generic magic. I would say this game is solidly in the mid game. You can see I have quite a lot of research done, thanks in part to my high researchers and my efficient researchers. I think the easiest way to do this is just go top to bottom. Conjuration gives us access to a lot of all of our national summons, which are all very useful. Other things of note in here, I would say, are summon Earth Power and summon Storm Power. Storms would be hard for us to get up, but we can Communion Celestial Masters to do it if we really want to. But it's a thought. I think the big one is Earth Power and Phoenix Power. We have Fire 2 and Earth 2 mages, lots of them. That's a big strength of those paths, being able to do that. Dark Knowledge is also pretty useful. Natively, we really only have Death 1s, and we do have a little bit of Death income to start with. If you could find a couple Death sites to really get that ball rolling, I think it's well worth your time to Dark Knowledge everything and really pump that Death income. If you empower somebody up to 2, then they can make themselves a staff up to 3, and then you can really go to town with some death stuff there. All pretty good stuff there. Because of our wide pathing, all these like low path cost things, we can do all of these. So maybe you want to summon in wolves to help you patrol something. We can do all the elementals if we feel like it. Power of the Spheres is another big one. We have lots of people who have Astral, and our Celestial Masters would greatly benefit from this. This gives us +1 to all paths except for Blood and Holy, so it can take somebody who's really struggling to do anything in combat to, they can pick something and do it in combat. Quite helpful there. I'm not going to go particularly high here, but Nest of Salamanders is another very powerful summon, and we can natively do that, so that might be another one of interest there. Alteration, we like doing buffs. We have troops that are very good, but they definitely appreciate having the buffs. So being able to hit them with Bark Skin, with Iron Skin, with Body Ethereal. Our Demons of Celestial Waters would love to have Ethereal. That would really make them hard to take out. Um, Quickness, all the Thug buffs, just everything in here is really good. It should also be noted that Freeze and Frozen Heart give your Water 2 mages something to do. Frozen Heart's one you don't see too often, but it is incredibly powerful. Range 25 plus, hits one person, it 100% precision. Only costs 20 fatigue, so you can do it more than 5 times before passing out. And it's cold magic damage 10 plus. It's completely armor negating, and it doesn't say here, but it hits your heart. So if you survive it, it's very likely that you have a chest wound. So a very, very killy spell that really gives water mages some deadly options. Also of note, at 6, if you do go that high, you get Summon Vitriol, which is Green Lions. These are ethereal acid summons. You only get one, I believe you only get one of these for 3 water gems, but if you're not using your water gems for Demons of Celestial Waters, Summon Vitriols are very, very powerful. A really strong unit. If somebody hasn't had to deal with ethereal things on you, and all of a sudden you rock up with like 10 of these, they're going to be in some trouble there. It should also be noted that our Earth 2 guys can summon Earth Power up to Earth 3, and we could Ironbane. Now be careful here. This does affect you too, so most of our equipment is iron, but maybe you have like some summons and some skeletons and PD, and you just have 1 or 2 mages, and you hit them with a Ironbane, and then retreat or something. Could be pretty interesting there. Could be pretty devastating. Next up in Evocation, I think Evo 2 is the sweet spot for early game. We have a wide spread of mages who can cast literally everything at Tier 1 and Tier 2. Flare would maybe be a little hard for us to cast, but that gives us tons and tons of options. Cold Blast, Cold Bolt. We have Acid people, so Acid Spray could work. Geyser could be pretty interesting. I think going to 2 is for sure something you want to do in the early game. Going above that later on, I think, is to taste. A lot of stuff we can do, so it's just a matter of if you need it or not. Enchantment is very powerful for us. We would really like flame arrows, and also accuracy buffs to archers. So this has both. So we can take our True Shot Warriors, let's say. Area of Effect 20 gives plus 4 precision. And at 5, we could get Flaming Arrows. Area of Effect 20 gives the 5 armor-piercing fire damage. So really good buff. I do think you want to do that. It's just a matter of, do you rush here at the beginning, or is this more of your mid-game plan? But either way, I think works. The death spells from here can be kind of nice. Lots of other buffs that you can pick up here. Cloud Trapeze is a really nice spell. You can move people around with that effectively. Finally, we have Thaumaturgy. This is a nation that is good at Thaumaturgy. We have Astral, we have Glamour, we have Nature, we have Fire, we have Water. That's all the paths here. Particularly of note is Furious Warriors and its other cousins. Attack skill plus 2, morale plus 2 is exactly what our melee troops need. And we can get Fire 2 mages relatively easy. We can Phoenix Power up to 3, which lowers the cost down to 20 and raises the size up to 5. So I think it's well worth a Fire Mage's time to get this on as many troops as you possibly can. Otherwise, we have buffs like Luck, can be quite good, and the fatigue things from water. So if you don't have anything else for your water mages to do, Desiccation, basically they start taking fatigue damage every round until they can negate it. Sailor's Death is 14 magic damage, Area of Effect 1, so you can just kill entire squares in a single cast, and it's magic resist negates, not armor, so can be good to hit heavily armored troops with something like that. We also have different types of prisons, so this would hold people in place so you can hit them with your bad attack troops. Be pretty good for that. We also get Mind Blast and Paralyze, gives something for our Astral Mages to do. Various things for Glamour, like Slumber. Overall, a very, very good path. I do think Battle Fury is so good, I think that might be worth rushing. Probably up to at least level 4 for Furious Warriors. And if you're going to go to 4, that'll unlock your Furious Warriors and Fire Prison at the same time. So quite good there. So we are a nation that, while we don't have the biggest mages, we have some very focused, good combat mages, and we have some pretty wide utility mages. So overall, I would say that with the new mages that they've added, magic is a very strong point for early age Tien Chi. Okay, so let's bring all of that together. I know that was a whole lot there. So we have good troops with good equipment let down by bad training. We are human chassis with 10 morale and 10 attack and 10 precision. We like getting buffed. We have some light cav that's good for flanking. We have an extremely heavy chariot. We have a mediocre sacred. We have a ton of mages, many of which are sacred, and a main battle mage that is non-fort recruitable that is not sacred. What does that tell us? I think this is a scales nation, meaning I don't think the bless is particularly good here. I think I would prefer to go with heavy scales and get tons and tons of these troops and tons of mages to support them, tons of mages to do research and get out site searching and summon in all kinds of things, both our national summons and otherwise. I had a ton of fun on this nation. Unfortunately, I don't think I have a particularly good fight. Well, let's peek at this one. So I've been in a death war with Pangea. We have basically exhausted each other. This is the remnants of my main army. It used to be about 3 times this size. However, I haven't really lost mages, so you can see how many mages and how much magic is going off here. We've got glamour bolts going out. We saw lightning. I've got fire arrows, and I think, have you been wind guided? Yes, and wind guide going out. So I have precision 16 fire missiles coming out of what's left of my archers. We have geysers going off. We have acid going off. We're using the pikemen here because they were pretty good against Pangea. I've also got some shielded troops that were soaking up arrows in other fights. Overall, just really showing off the combined arms plus the high amounts of magic that we have. And you see the webs are just holding all these people in place. Just tons and tons of magic. This was so much fun. This wasn't even by far the most interesting combat. This is just remnants of both of our armies continuing to clash, essentially. Very fun. And you can see two water. There's a nature guy. There's another nature guy. Here's an air. Like, all kinds of these two-pathing mages being super duper useful. There's fire and air, so they were back here buffing the archers. Very fun. If you're somebody who wants to do more traditional, like I want line troops and I want to support them with magic, Tien Chi will do that to a T for you. Very fun. In this game, I lucked out. I had forest, mountains, forest. So I've been recruiting all those non-fort mages from all these spots very effectively. And I've got some good forts. Tien Chi's forts are important because we want to get a bajillion troops. So getting lots of good forts with good resources is important for us. Okay, let's take a look at Pretender design. This is the Pretender from the game I was showing you. I went with mostly a Mage Bless. So we have 2 Reinvigoration, Arcane Command, and Arcane Finesse. This guy came in at Dormant, and he was mainly picked for scales. We have 2 Order, 5 Production, 1 Magic, and we paid for that with just Dormant and a single bad Heat Scale. Only 5 Dominion because I wasn't planning on using my Sacred Recruits. The Arcane Command lets all my mages much more easily move around my summons. The Arcane Finesse is useful for big battlefield spells later on. It's also useful for Glamour troops and Astral troops quite well, and some extra Reinvigoration just to keep them casting. This guy was not meant to be an expander or anything. He was mainly picked for those and the scales, and he did his job perfectly fine. He's mobile, which is nice, so he can help claim thrones because we don't have native Holy Threes. We only have our Prophet. And he's stealthy, so he's good at running around and doing that. He can help site search if I really wanted to pump Astral, but otherwise just mainly picked for his scales and his pathing. I quite liked him. For other Pretender chassis, we have the Eastern Titan grouping, which has decent decent ones, actually. They're one of my more liked ones. They can be pretty expensive, 250, 240, 280, 270. That's the problem with Titans, unfortunately. But for what you have a good variety of different pathing and different scales and different abilities. So starting from the top, we actually don't have a lot of immobiles. We have the Fountain of Blood and the Oracle, and we have the Statue of War. Statue of War does lower your turmoil / order limit. I think you probably want order on this nation. If you go turmoil, you're probably going to take sloth to match, and that means you're going to really limit yourself to your lighter troops, the 10 cost, 10 resource guys, and I think you're hurting yourself by doing that. But if you took this guy, I mean, he is relatively cheap, right? 180 points. Well, I guess these others are cheaper. I don't think Blood's particularly good on this nation, so I think I'd skip that. Oracle I do find rather interesting, though. What you could do with an Oracle is something like this. So we could take displacement, we could take quickness, and that would give us 7 extra defense, essentially, doubling our attacks and giving us some extra attack. Pretty good. I mean, we could take this guy dormant, and we've paid for it already. So, I don't know, maybe like this and that. I mean, this is playable. Could totally play this. Gives us a little bit of production. We have to wait a year for him to come out, but when he does, our summons could use this. I don't know, could be interesting. One thing I really want to try is vitriol weapons. I think vitriol weapons would be excellent on these sacreds, especially with quickness. However, yeah, we still have to pay for all those bless points, and even here, I guess we didn't fully pay. So we would have to lower 2 more scales. I'd probably go something like, I absolutely hate that. Something like that. I don't know, something like that. I don't know. You could pay for it. Maybe drop the quickness and just take the vitriol weapons. That's a lot more doable. Yeah, that's a lot more doable. But it's something that could work. Otherwise, Celestial Carp, he's a pop killer, but he's also a water breather. So he's somebody who helps you get underwater very easy. The Jade Emperor is interesting in that he gives you production and order. So you could go order 3, production 3, and some sort of build out from there. That's definitely a scales type guy. He's very expensive, so you're probably taking him imprisoned or at least dormant. Otherwise, I think these things are to taste. Some of these multi-armed, like Hindu type gods, can be pretty nasty combatants with the right bless. Are very usable. We went with this guy. He was pretty interesting to me because he gives the extra production scale. So that was my thought there. I'm not in love with this guy. Luck scale's okay. I think the Bodhisattva of Mercy would be an interesting one because she's a healer. So you could have a healer right away in your capital. Also increases your order scales. Could be interesting there. She's also, 230 is still super expensive. A Phoenix. Phoenix is interesting in that it actually does have Dominion immortality. So as long as you don't leave your own Dominion, if you get killed, you come back. Could be kind of useful. He's fire and air, so maybe take him, drop this. So let's say we did at least this, and that lets you be a flying mobile Flaming Arrows Wind Guide caster. So you could run around and do that if you didn't have enough mage support for it. Could be interesting there. For expansion gods, I'm not loving these. Like, this guy's relatively cheap, but he doesn't have enough protection. Yeah, he just doesn't have enough protection. He's going to end up getting himself goinked. We do have the Earth Serpent, the old classic. I don't know. Not super in love with these other ones. Down in the Dominion 1 level, we do have the Master for only 90 points. So he is super duper cheap for just an astral caster that can fly. Maybe if I was going to take him, I would maybe he goes imprisoned or dormant. and we go pretty high here. So he's going to come in and make you rings of sorcery when he finally arrives, and he just gives you an absolute ton of points. So maybe an imprisoned bless here with some decent scales still. So I don't know. You could figure your own bless out there, something like that. So I think we have a decent selection here. We do not have good expanders, unfortunately. Um, I don't think we really struggle, but we're also not like super duper good at expanding either. We're kind of middle of the road. So I like the choices here. I think there's tons of cool things you could do. Like the Kami of the Sun is an interesting chassis. If you could find a way to get her to survive, so like she's going to need gear, but she has all three and decent pathing, so she could fire shield herself, ethereal herself, uh, put on that armor of the 5 elements, and maybe like dual wield our chi swords. So she gives her a bunch of fatigue or reinvigoration. She has awe. She has sight vengeance, so as people attack her, they'll go blind, making her 16 defense even better. I don't know. Could make something out of that. Overall, I'd say good chassis choices, if maybe a smidgen on the limited side. As for finishing off my thoughts on scales, I think that for me, this is a scales nation. I think you want as much production for sure as you can get, and I think that order helps if you want your super expensive cavalry option. So, and it also helps on your income a little bit because you are generally going to be spending all that money because you have non-cap, non-fort recruitable battle mages that are excellent at 170 gold every other turn, with a relatively light forest mountain requirement. You can definitely get 3, 4, 5 areas that you're recruiting those from, and that can add up quite a bit of cost. So I think this is a scales nation, but I do see why people really, really want to make a bless work here. I think they have cool summons and they're all sacred, so you definitely could find something that would please most of them. Okay, so that's going to be my thoughts for early age Tien Chi spring and autumn. Let me know what you think. Have you found a bless that actually works for everybody that you really like? Do you like playing scales nations? It's something I do like to do, and I think this is a good nation for it. The addition of this guy right here, Master of the Sword, has skyrocketed how much fun I've had playing this nation. I always liked their troops. I think they're interesting as a bog standard human lineup with good equipment, but now we can support that with good magic, and that really makes it a lot of fun to use. And we have wide pathing, so we're not just like, oh, we have fire, magic, and a little bit of earth. We have like everything, everything but blood, basically. We can do something with it. So let me know what you're thinking on that. Let me know if you've had any cool, maybe an Awake Expander, if you found something good there, or your favorite Bless, or maybe you like a different kind of scales than I used here. Yeah, I think it's a pretty flexible nation. I think they are a ton of fun to play. Don't let the bare bones description here dissuade you. I think they're very cool. I think this is going to be a really, really fun stream where we're going to concentrate on lots of interesting magic and maybe some thugs and lots of summons and site searching. It's going to be an absolute fun one, builders. I'm really looking forward to this one. All right, if you haven't and you've made it this far, I really would appreciate if you'd leave a like on the video. It helps YouTube show it to other people. And if you already haven't, maybe this is the video that I've earned your subscription. And if you'd go ahead and do that for me, it'd be much appreciated. It helps the channel get more exposure and number go up, make Babel happy. So you can make my day by subscribing if you already haven't. If you're a current subscriber, thank you. You guys are the best. I absolutely love having streams with people coming out, discussing different strategies, feeling my pain, celebrating our accomplishments. Great, great fun. All right, builders, I will see you on the stream and in the comments. I'm really looking forward to seeing if anyone has found the magic bless that just totally will change my mind and make me want to do bless instead of scales. We'll see, though. You've got a big path ahead of you if that's your goal. All right, builders, go out there, build something cool. I'll see you on stream.